Okay. Hello, everyone. I am Vidisha. We are here to talk about a topic that is frequently discussed in private and always causes hesitation when it's brought out. That is child sexual abuse. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. As we come towards the end of this month, we are here today to share our thoughts and throw light on this issue. Sadly, India records a very high number of child abuse cases. As per the NCRB data in 2020, a total of 28.9% of the total child population faces some kind of crime against them, but only 65.6% of the total crime committed is reported. To talk more about this and to open up the conversation with parents and children, we have Chitra Iyer, who is the co-founder and CEO of Space to Grow, a social impact consulting firm that leads strategic advisory and consulting for nonprofits, social startups, industry, and community-based organizations in the field of digital safety, anti-human trafficking, and inclusive skilling and livelihoods. Also joining us today is Divya, a change maker from She Creates Change and a mental health advocate, petitioning to the edtech company Byju's to include the child helpline number 1098 across their platform, and will also share her journey with us. A very warm welcome, Divya and Chitra.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Vidisha.
So to start with, I want to start with you, Divya. You have been running a campaign to raise awareness around child sexual abuse. Can you please share that with us and elaborate more on it?
Sure. Thank you. Firstly, thank you, Vidisha, for this opportunity and giving me a platform to talk about my campaign. Coming to the campaign, this, of course, started as a part of the She Creates Change Lab, which played a major role for me in coming out and sharing my journey of being one of the survivors of child sexual abuse for a longest time in my childhood. While I could not do anything back then, I knew that to heal myself and to ensure that I can probably save one more child, I will have to do something as I get that power and I get that knowledge and the skills. So this petition is on along those lines, wherein I'm asking Byju's, which is the edtech platform, India's largest edtech platform, catering to over around 15 lakhs plus students, right? To put out 1098, the child helpline number, across the touch points, so that the children can be more aware about who can they probably reach out to for help, that there is someone who can help them out in case they're facing not only just a sexual abuse, but probably a physical abuse, emotional abuse, or it could be any form of violence and abuse.
Sure. Thank you. I think it's very important that to firstly recognize the problem that many children wouldn't know who to go to specifically if the perpetrator is someone from their family or close one. So as a society, how can we address this issue?
Well, that's a very interesting question to ask and for me to answer, because when a perpetrator is from your family, you actually have no one to go to, and which is very sad, because I know a lot of folks whose primary caregivers were the perpetrators and they had no one to, and they had to suffer for a very long time. Coming back to the question of what the society can do as a whole, I think it's about making the space for children more safe and secure. And I believe mothers have a good role to play in this to start with, and to ensure that their male or their female child, because even males tend to face the child sexual abuse, they are given, all the necessary care and attention and knowledge to protect them. And on a larger level, I believe multiple stakeholders are involved, and one of the stakeholders being the corporate companies or the edtech companies for that matter, since they are in direct touch with a lot of students as the students learn from their platform. So I believe that they can play a major role in spreading awareness about this child helpline number and about this issue of child sexual abuse as a whole, in my opinion. And Byju's being one of them is one of the largest edtech companies is why I'm asking them for, promoting the number and raising the awareness to save children.
Sure. Thank you so much, Divya, for responding to that. I think it puts a specific highlight on different stakeholders who can actually play a part in addressing this issue. Chitra, I would now like to come to you. Space to Grow has worked with multiple organizations, building capacity and conducting, trainings. So talking about edtech spaces, some say that edtech is growing and some say it's not. So what's your take on this? And what has Space to Grow done so far?
Sure. So I think, just to start off with, I just want to say a huge courageous initiative by Divya to really raise the awareness on child sexual abuse. And specifically in this case, it's about edtech. But I'm sure there are different online engagement platforms which definitely need to do this immediately. Having said that, I think do statistics matter if there is just one child also involved? So having said that, I just have to say that it really doesn't matter how big you are, how small you are, whether the industry is growing, whether the industry is not growing, whether social media platforms are growing, not growing, is Facebook doing well today or Insta doing well today. But at the end of the day, if it's even one child, I think industry has to respond. So I think coming to also some specifics, EdTech did have a huge explosion during the times of COVID. And, talking to industry leaders, I do hear that, there is a stagnation in terms of course, there was a steep curve that went up and now it's really, coming down in terms of stabilization with schools opening and all of that. But I think what's important to know is online learning as such is here to stay. And I think it's important that it's here to stay because school education, along with some of this in terms of online education, is just going to make it all better for children, and children are going to use internet. So it's important that any industry, including in this specific instance, when we are talking about edtech, if you have a touch point of a child, you are absolutely accountable and responsible to make your platforms totally safe and compliant for children. So that's been the philosophy that we work with. We've worked with some, there has been instances when we've gone to some companies, not edtech specifically, but have been told that, children have to learn to do the right things, But the whole point is that where, this entire question of whose onus is it, I think it's very clearly to, the minds of at least people who are working in the sector, that it is definitely the industry and regulations from the government, which are very important to ensure that safety of children is prima facie and alongside the business that's really happening. So that's something that just wanted to say. Of course, statistics don't matter. One child also matters. I think another thing to just add here is what Space to Grow does. Space to Grow has been working in the sector to talk about digital safety, and we've been acting as a thought leader. We work with several state governments and also with industry to really spread the awareness of digital safety of children in the online spaces, and EdTech being one of them. What we see is that because children are on the EdTech space and in the online learning platforms, it's very important that there is a good integration of child safety and compliances to child safety within EdTech platforms. So there are 4 things that we do when we work with EdTech and other companies in terms of making child safety, a reality in itself. One is we work on the product. To really make the product itself safe, to have a proactive way of looking at your product development to ensure that there are enough chatbots and others to remove profanity in that sense. The second area that we work on is awareness building. So like Divya rightly said, there are so many children on the platform. It's important to reach out. So really creating the content in terms of digital safety and how children have to be safe in the online space. So we've created content, we've reached out to children in the on the platforms. And also the third thing is 1098 is definitely something that we, at least I didn't know when I was going to school, but I know that my daughter knows it today, that there is something called 1098. to a level where she has fun at home to say that, if you do something, I'm going to call 1098. And I just want all children to be like that. So to be able to be so empowered to be able to just pick up the phone and dial that number if they are unsafe. But I think what's really important is 1098 is a number, but it's important that within these industries, there are redressal mechanisms for children if they do end up in unsafe experiences. So we also create child safety policy, we create redressal mechanisms, and we've also created the first of its kind of child policy with one of the largest edtech company in the country. And we also engage with the government. So like, for example, the regulatory bodies like NCPCR today have a manual which talks about school safety and online safety for children who are in schools and other institutions. Even if EdTech is not mentioned, EdTech is an institution in the learning space, and they have to abide by, these manuals which are already there. So four-pronged approach, product, awareness, policy, and engaging with the government. Those are the four pillars, through which we internalize child safety in EdTech and other industries as well.
Thank you, Chitra. That was very insightful, and congratulations on all the work that Space to Grow has been doing in this area, addressing this issue with so many other companies. You've talked about the different mechanisms that edtech spaces can do to address this issue, to make their platforms child friendly. Can you elaborate on what basically can be done more on by the edtech space to ensure that even if they're catering to children, you have to have a for example, a policy which addresses any form of abuse if the children using your platform faces by any chance. So and I would also like you to share why does it needs to be done by edtech spaces, and why is it the need of the hour? So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So I think one of the most important thing as to why edtech spaces, it's a learning space. It's like your school. You go to a physical space or you are in an online space. At the end of the day, my objective is to learn, and learning spaces have to be pious. They cannot be spaces where children have to go through unsafe experiences, where learning then gets absolutely shut down. Because once you get on a space like that and you've had an experience like that, I'm sure, the first thing is the children are going to go back, retract from where they are, rather than actually moving forward. And I think awareness on these issues, like, giving that number of 1098, or, we're talking about redressal mechanisms, only enables those safe spaces for conversation. Until and unless children have safe spaces today, it's going to be a huge challenge for them to be able to talk about these issues, but also become able to redress these issues by themselves also. There is another very important point is that edtech spaces, the influencers who ensure children come onto that space are their parents, or are they are teachers. Now, if I have to talk about an online gaming or a social media platform, many a times it may not be that parents have influenced you. It's just that children want to be there. That doesn't, take that away from them that, these platforms can be unsafe. But the point is that the trust of a parent and a child, there is a trust of a parent and teacher. There's a trust of the child and the teacher. And in a space like that, having an unsafe experience is absolutely non-negotiable. It cannot happen. And I think that's why for edtech, it's really, really important that they create safer online learning spaces, because that's the service you're providing. Education, it's not entertainment, and education cannot come with abuse. And I think that's very, very important. I can just share a use case of, Vedantu. Vedantu is the largest edtech that we have worked with. I think to your question, Vidisha, as to what really enables this to work, it has to be the leadership. It has to be the founders and co-founders of these organizations who are able to align to that touch point of a child. So in case of Vedantu, when we started talking to them about this, I think the most important thing was what I heard from the founders was, even I have a child. And if my child has to be, whether on Vedantu platform or whether on any learning platform, I want them to be safe. So let me make my platform safer. So I think that's extremely important. One of, in the development sector, we say we have to work bottoms up. We have to go to the community, understand things and move forward. But for child safety and compliance and industry and regulation, it has to be top down. It has to be driven by the leadership and the founders to really get this into being, and also, of course, the regulatory bodies. So with Vedantu, what we did was create this entire child safety matrix, and we have been able to also come up with a benchmarking standard for edtech companies today, which enables to assess how risky they are when it comes to child safety. So in case of Vedantu, we started working 3 years back, and today Vedantu is like 80% child safe from where they were 26%. So there's a huge change that has happened. And I'm sure it's a scalable model that can be introduced into so many other edtechs. And, we could definitely talk a little more about it. But yeah, that's basically to say one little thing, that top-down approach, institutionalization, and learning spaces cannot have abuse at all.
Thank you so much, Chitra, for sharing that and for sharing a very great example. I believe this would pave the way for other edtech companies to adapt ways to address this issue. And if you the scalable model of yours that you have built for Vedantu, for example. Thank you for sharing that. I would now like to ask another question about, and specifically Chitra, you've talked about digital safety, you talked about online safety. Reports suggest a third or nearly 33% of the parents among the respondents reported that strangers approached their children via online platforms. We saw this, that the number of cases of online cyber abuse also rose during the pandemic. So how do we then ensure online safety of children?
Sure. So I think I'll just take an example. So one of the training programs that we were doing for parents, that was the first time the parent was ever attending a training on digital safety. And the first thing that they said was, online ही तो होता है, it's okay, क्या फर्क पड़ता है, दिखता नहीं है, पता नहीं लगता है, So I think the problem with the online space is the fact that you're not able to see the other person, or you can easily avoid your, personality on the online space. It becomes far more easy for strangers to reach out to children. And if parents have said 33%, I'm sure this is far more than what the respondents are saying, because many a times in such researches, a lot of, people are not willing to share openly. Because there is so much stigma attached to a million things in the world. Like Divya said, it takes years to really come out and take that courage to come and talk and make sure that, the world is a better place for every single person, and nobody goes through that abuse that, we have, been a part of. So I think it's very important to understand, of course, these statistics are there, but then I'm sure this is much more. What's really important is a common sense of understanding of what is child sexual abuse, a common sense of understanding of child sexual abuse from a parent's side, from a teacher's side, from a child's side, and from the people in the larger ecosystem of, say, the law enforcement, the police, and everybody around. Because what happens is, if a child says, I'm uncomfortable, now we start questioning that being uncomfortable, right? We say, why are you uncomfortable? Oh, it's okay. It's not a big deal. Just hang in there. So I think it's very important to have a common sense. Now common understanding would be, go to the POCSO Act and say, okay, these are the things and this is what it is. But when you read the POCSO Act, it's so descriptive that sometimes you just don't want, children are going to feel like, I don't understand this. Or parents are going to say, oh, itna to nahi hota hai. So I think it's very important to have a common language of what child sexual abuse is, and an understanding amongst all the stakeholders about it. The second thing is going to be that give children that space to talk. Create those spaces where there are safer interactions. Create a space where a child can just walk in and say, this happened to me, and you're not judged. And I think that's going to be very, very important, because today's children, especially, I think they believe in their peers more than anybody else. They trust their peers more. Now, can we have peer change makers? Can we have peer leadership training on child sexual abuse, so that, even if I don't want to go to my parents, I don't want to go to a law enforcement, I go to my peer, but I get the right advice. It's not something that's a self-intervention which is just left loose. So can we look at peer leadership? And last but not the least, I think it's important that reporting will only help solve these issues. I think we have to come out of that stigma of abuse as a big, thing that I can't share because it's gonna, hurt my life forever. For a child, it is going to be difficult. But can, as caregivers, teachers, parents, support the child in terms of ensuring that reporting happens? Because, like you said, even if there are stranger interactions, and the whole point is that if parents don't go and report, you're never going to come to know about reporting. So child sexual abuse reporting and online child sexual abuse reporting is very, very important, because physical space reporting, at least people are now thinking of going. But online space, you feel it's online, let's not go there, go to the law enforcement. So I think it's very important, to make reporting easier. So trainings with police officers coming to schools and talking, making that khaki that the police officers wear a friendly thing. And that's when the interactions really start happening. So I think one common sense of understanding of child sexual abuse, looking at definitely creating those safe spaces where judgments are not passed. Thirdly, really making, law enforcement and others really interact in a way that children are able to report. And last but not the least, parents have to come out of this entire thing of there's just no stigma associated to it. Give that child that power to be able to report, give that child that support to be able to heal, give that child that support to be able to go out and change the world, what Divya is doing actually.
Thank you, Chitra. That was so very informative, as well as very helpful and insightful. I agree to the point where it's so difficult to actually sometimes make parents understand what is exactly child sexual abuse. And there's a whole, as you said, there's a whole stigma around it that and the job gets more difficult because of that. I also love the point where you mentioned that how to create safe spaces, how to create enabling a child-friendly space for children by their parents. Because most of the time, of course, they spend in schools, but also they spend online and at home in their safe spaces. And how to enable a child to even report if they are facing any kind of abuse. Divya, do you want to add anything to what Chitra said? Of course, you have been running a campaign to Byju's, and you have kind of you have a nice journey from since the time you started this campaign. So what do you think about the online safety of children, and specifically because you have mentioned 1098 to be put in the platform of Byju's? Why do you think children need to know about 1098, and how do we ensure that they're kind of using the helpline number if it's made available to them?
That's like a couple of questions, and I'll pick them up one by one. Starting with what Chitra was talking about, something that really stuck with me was making khaki friendly. And this is coming from a place where no girl should be, is that the police needs to be first, the law enforcers needs to be sensitized about this whole thing. Because I've seen it in the news. I've spoken to a lot of people around, and they've always been like, we don't report because we don't want to get into that mental torture that we go through. Right. And that's I think that's one of the top most thing that needs to be really solved. And the enforcers, the law enforcers really need to be sensitized, be it the male or the female. And even the judges, for that matter, of the courts, are not very sensitive when it comes to these cases, and the way the questions are asked is not the right approach in my opinion. So probably that is one of the reasons that even if I today want to go and complain to a law enforcer, I wouldn't, because they're going to put me under so much of questions that I would rather not go there. So I think it has to start from there to start with. Secondly, about the online safety space, again, as Chita mentioned, say if it's a abuse is a abuse, no matter in what form is it happening and where is it happening. So, and with the rise of the pandemic, I don't want to, I never thought I would be saying this out loud, but I had people in my DM trying to do things that they were not supposed to during the pandemic. But since I was a grown up adult and enough to understand things, what was wrong, I could take the right steps of blocking them, reporting them, and perhaps even asking my friends to report those profiles, so that the social media team or whatever it is, Instagram's rules, they can actually block those profiles. So online safety is of utmost importance right now, because it's just become more easier to troll someone, to abuse someone, and just get away with it, because probably you can't be found now. You have very, like, I mean, the way the technology is evolving, you can even hide your identity completely and no one will ever get to know. So it's super important for parents to use tools like parental control that's available on, say, the antiviruses on your PCs or on your phones, if you're giving phones to your children, right, to communicate. So I think parental control and everything, every efficient tool that's out there should be used to protect and ensure a safe space for the child right there.
Thank you, Divya, for sharing it, for sharing your thoughts. I think agree with with all the points that you said. Specifically, the training part, the khaki training part, really actually again struck me, and I think no, I think all the stakeholders that play a very important role in a child's life. The people that a child is accustomed to or has access to play, I think, have small roles in making the whole society a child friendly, or making a whole space child friendly for the kid. We'll thank you for sharing all your thoughts. We'll keep the conversation going, and we don't want the conversation to just stop on this month, as we observe Child Abuse Prevention Month. I would like to thank Divya and Chitra for joining us today and sharing your thoughts and sharing the incredible work that you're doing. And hope to see you soon. Hope to keep the conversations alive, and make the society work together and make the society a child friendly space for every child that are here. So thank you, Chitra. Thank you, Divya. And take care.
Thank you, Bidisha, for having me here. Thank you.
Thank you, Vidisha, for having me as well. Just one last thought I want to leave all of us with is that the ethics space has a self-regulatory body, which is pretty much active. And I think with people in the industry like Byju's and with Vedantu, who has already done something like this, and with larger edtech, I think self-regulation may not be enough. But if we can really use some of these models and then look at scale, I think every single online learning space can become safer. And I think it will be absolutely wonderful to see, Divya, your campaign actually becoming a reality. Thank you so much for your, valuable feedback. And once again, congratulations to you, Divya, for really being that change maker.
Thank you. Thank you, Chitra.
Thank you, Chitra, for
Thank you
sharing
so
the
much.
thought. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.